morning. ये जो एक दरिंदगी इन्होंने फैलाई हुई है ना, लाशें फेंकना. They say that it will close. ये खत्म कर देगा सारी चीजें. इनको ये नहीं पता है कि ये उसको इतने बड़े लेवल से ओपन कर रहा है कि आपकी सोच भी नहीं है.
Namaste everyone. Welcome to the Cārvāka podcast. This is your host kushalmehra. If you've been following the podcast for the last few weeks, I've been trying to talk about Balochistan. We also had a brief discussion on it, even on the Sham Sharma show. But I had Sushant come on the podcast, and at that time we did not have the latest incident of the train being taken over and the subsequent deaths that happened on all the sides, whether it's the Pakistani army or on the side of the Baloch freedom fighters. And at that time, I did not anticipate what was happening, but I was reading a book, by the way, and this was not planned or anything. I came across the book because of Abhijit. Abhijit had told me to read this book. The book is Balochistan Bruised Battered and Bloodied. And it's my absolute pleasure to have the author, Francesca Marino, with me. Francesca, thank you for coming.
Hi, good morning.
So, Francesca, let's start here. How did you, because this is your first time on my podcast, at least.
Yes.
So maybe we can start a little bit with your journey, how and how this pivot into covering the subcontinent, I would say India, Pakistan, Balochistan, Bangladesh, and all these issues.
Okay, that's a very easy answer and a very difficult one too, because really, I don't know. I mean, I started traveling all over the subcontinent at a point because I had this fascination for India and the subcontinent since I was a child, because of Emilio Salgari books, which are not translated in India, but you might know the TV serial they made at the point called Sandokan with Kabir Bedi as a main character.
Yeah.
So I started traveling, and then it happened.
No, but like your journey as a journalist, as someone who covers these things, and like, so you have in India we would call it a national security apparatus focus, or territorial integrity of India focus. But for you, it comes from a different point of view, right? What is the point of view that made you start covering, let's say, the Baloch movement or India, Pakistan, the conflicts in general?
See, I was a journalist. I was a writer and a journalist. I was interested in what was happening, and I was interested in understanding the place where I was traveling to. So the thing is, my approach has always been very strange, because I did not do it from the top. I was never sent here as a envoy of this or that big media outlet. I never got a stringer. I never relied on other people to know whatever. My approach was, yes, I interacted, and quite a lot, with top level personalities, politicians, generals, and so on. But mainly, I was doing everything myself, and I was traveling, and I was not going there saying, "Oh, I'm a journalist. This is the interview." I would start chatting in some shop or in some beauty parlor with ladies. But many times they took me home. I would start. I mean, I realized that, and I realized it later, it was a strange approach, because for me was the only way to understand. I mean, why and how you understand a country if you don't interact with its people. So for me, it was normal. And then slowly, you would get news. And many times I would get news from the real sources because I was there and nobody perceived me. Many also did not know I was a journalist, but I was perceived like, not a threat. So yeah, it started like this. Then yes, I interacted with presidents, with generals, with big politicians, with big terrorists also. But even that was done not through the usual path. It was done through people that I knew at that point. So I had access to things that usually people don't have access or have a different kind of access.
So from a research perspective, how long have you studied this in terms of visiting? Like, how does one cover Balochistan when they travel in Balochistan or not? Because I mean, the famous adage is the Pakistani ISI and the army would be everywhere, right?
Yeah. Okay. I've been traveling many times to Pakistan. As I said, I interacted a lot with local people. Yes, they don't give access since many years to Balochistan. If you go there and they know you are a journalist, there are other ways to do things. So yeah, I don't know many foreign journalists who were traveling on buses. As I said, it is a different kind of approach.
So as far as Balochistan is concerned,
if you travel with local ladies and you are in a bus and I am a South Italian, I don't look so much foreigner.
So they get confused. And so, a lot of, obviously in your book, you start with the history of Balochistan and obviously what happened with Kalat and all of that before 1947 or 1948. What happens in 1948? Yeah. What happens before that? What was the relationship between the British and the Balochis? Yeah. You've explained a lot of that, but I want to focus from a historical perspective, from an Indian perspective, is that and this has not probably got to do with your book. I want to talk about the Indian misunderstanding. Do you think India has misunderstood the Baloch issue, or they could have done more?
See, once some Baloch told me, the problem is we don't share a border with India. So could have done more in what sense? Into highlighting what happened.
That's exactly what I was trying to intend.
Maybe they could have. Maybe the rest of the world could have done it. But some way, regarding India, this issue till a certain point got lost in a wider perspective. When still the Kashmir issue was hanging on. So not to be accused of the same thing India was accusing Pakistan to do in Kashmir. I think lots of the silence was because of this, for wider political or geopolitical reasons. And then, till 2006, there's been a time when Baloch were trying to deal with Pakistan and to be citizens of the country, till Nawab Bukti was killed. And Nawab Bukti, by the way, was one of those who was trying to advocate for peaceful coexistence, for some kind of autonomy and independence of Balochistan. There's been a long moment between the revolt of the 70s, crushed by the socialist father of the country, Bhutto. There's been a long time when they really tried. There was no, sporadic incidents and so on, but they really tried. So there was very little to do in that moment. Then Nawab Bukti was killed, was murdered. Whatever they say, he was leading a revolt. Nawab Bukti was more than 80. So it's quite unlikely he was in a cave, no? So anyway, then it started again. At the point, India highlighted the Baloch issue, but in practical terms, what you want to do? I mean, what any state can do? Yes, speaking at UN, but for the rest.
Fair enough. I mean, I think as far as the ops perspective is concerned, I think India could maybe sponsor a few more conferences for the Baloch issue. I feel India, that's just my criticism of the Indian government as a citizen of India looking at this issue. I think in terms of more research papers, more discussions, I think even the mainstream media only covers it when it gets covered in Pakistan. It's more reactionary in that sense. And
see, you have to think also in a geopolitical sense, and also in terms of international law. Strictly in terms of international law, and this is the reason why then in UN only the issue of human rights violations gets some way discussed. In terms of international law, is an internal issue of Pakistan because because Balochistan is officially a region of Pakistan. So there's this thing called interference into another country business, and Balochistan is not even a disputed region. According to international law, is a part of Pakistan. What India or any other country could do would be highlighting the total illegal annexion. But otherwise, it is a tricky thing to do for a country, for any country.
So now let's get to the current state of affairs and maybe we can build it up. And I'm glad you mentioned the Bukti murder or assassination, whatever we want to call it. It's quite obvious it was carried by the state. And now I was just recently listening to Akhtar Mengal.
Yeah.
And I was trying to understand where he comes from and then many others. So as of now, post the train incident, Mahrang Baloch has been arrested again. Nobody knows what they're doing with her. We barely know the exact level of violence that's been happening in Pakistan. And we don't know what they intend to do with Mahrang Baloch also. I mean, just nobody knows. But my first question to you would be, as of today, because see, this book is a slightly older one, right? So you could not cover a lot of things that are happening right now.
Yes, of course.
Right.
It's been published in 2020, 21.
Yeah, so it's been 5 years. So that's why, like, you are at the CPEC at the book ends at the CPEC, and now a lot of water has flown under the bridge. In fact, a lot of renewed Baloch freedom movement is around how China along with Pakistan, is focused on the resource extraction, and a lot of attacks on the Chinese company members have increased there. But let's talk about the current state of affairs. Now, we've heard, I forgot the name of that gentleman who said, I think most districts are out of Pakistan's hand. Akhtar Mengal tweeted,
मिनिस्ट्रान वजीर आज़म सदूर ने कभी बलूचिस्तान में मारे जाने वाले बेगुनाहों पर इज़हार अफसोस अपनी जगह उसकी मज़म्मत की है? कि मज़म्मत का ठेका भी सिर्फ हमने लिया हुआ है, मारे भी हमें, मज़म्मत भी हम करें कि आप उनके मुंह में चने डाले हुए हैं। वो मेरे भाइयों के मरने पर वो मज़म्मत नहीं कर सकते। वो अगर मज़म्मत करें, वो अपनी नौकरी के लिए, वो अपनी वजारत के लिए खातिर, या अपनी एमपीएशिप की खातिर कि वो कहीं उसकी एमपीएशिप न छीनी जाए, वो मज़म्मत नहीं कर सकते। लेकिन मैं अपने खूनी रिश्तों को के खिलाफ जो मज़म्मत करता रहूं।
pretty much on similar lines, that things are getting out of hand. So from your perspective, as someone who has really studied this region extensively, what is the current state of affairs in Balochistan?
See, again, Akhtar Mengal is one of those who has been trying to deal with Pakistan in a peaceful way as a citizen of the country and as a politician. But no was not enough, because in Pakistan, even the slight amount of criticism is not allowed. So he has been kicked out from the mainstream politics. They elected their own puppets to run Balochistan.
Can you explain what these puppets are like? They have that Sardar system, right? Tribal chiefs and stuff like that. Can you explain that?
Yeah, there's the Sardar, the tribal system was important years ago. Still it is, but the old category Pakistani army still uses. Still, they are trying to hit on Brahum Dag Bukti, on Meran Marri, on Herbiar Marri, all Sardars coming from the tribal system chiefs, accusing them to fuel the armed revolt in Balochistan. But they live abroad. And in the past few years, Pakistan will not allow any amount of criticism or anybody who can be perceived as a chief. Now the reference, if you were talking about the armed revolt, there is a class of young people in Balochistan, young, urban, educated class of people, which is frankly fed up with all this. And actually, for the army, it's much more difficult to catch, because it does not come on an hereditary power line. See, in the past, you could hit the family. Brahum Dag Bukti's sister and niece have been killed in cold blood in Karachi, coming back from a wedding.
Family members.
Yes, coming back from a wedding. The girl was 12. Yeah, this is what they do. But now, yes, when they catch somebody, they will start hitting the family. But the real question is, at this point, how many people can you kill or disappear? How many? Because it has come to this now. Yes, it's spiraling out of control. It's spiraling out of control because there's a turning point. There's a turning point, and I think they are fastly reaching, if they are not already reached, a point of no return, when even talking or discussing or what is, it will not work anymore, because people cannot take more than that. And this is what's happening. Taking Marang, Sammy Din, Marang has been candidated to the Nobel Prize, Peace Nobel Prize. Marang has been put into the time most influenced young leaders of the world by BBC, into the 100 most influential women of the world. But they took her. They took her. Yes, we don't know what's happening to her. Well, we know she's sick. One can easily suspect she's been slow poisoned with food. We know she from the police place where she has been taken, all the personnel has been replaced with ISI fellows. So they are most probably trying to force her to say what they are trying to pass, that she is attached the same way with the Balochistan Liberation Army. But my question is, even if suppose she is and she is not, suppose she is, what's your problem? What did she do? Nothing, except walking from Quetta to Islamabad, asking answer to a state which is in theory supposed to protect her and all the other women. I mean, maybe somebody should gift a copy of their constitution to the army, because the first thing the army of a country is supposed to do is protect their citizen. So last time I checked, Balochistan was still part of Pakistan. And those are Pakistani citizens. And you don't deal with women, old people, and children sitting quietly and asking for answers. You don't deal with them with latte and cold water in December. You give answers. You give answers. Yeah, they deny people disappear, but in this case, even Western human rights organizations, starting from Amnesty, have documented. Yes, not all the cases, because they are not all documented, but people do disappear, and they should give answers, but they don't. So if you deal with this, with your citizens, the last peaceful demonstrations, again, mainly women, old people, and children, because most of the men are disappeared. If you deal with these demonstrations with guns, again, they killed a 12-year-old boy between other people. If you deal with protesters, I mean, peaceful, unarmed civilians with guns, grenade, and tear gas. So, well, you are not anymore the army of their country. You are an enemy army.
It's just heartbreaking. I was just looking at the number of deaths. I mean, we can't even calculate the number of deaths that the Pakistani army has just gone on and done. Like I sincerely wish Maharang is doing fine. I know I can only wish. I mean, what a brave woman. Like it's
You know, the worst thing is that in the beginning was just Balochistan. Now they are, since they realize they can do with total impunity
Mm.
because nobody really bothers.
Mhm.
They are applying the same recipe and the same treatment to other citizens. They do the same with Pashtun. They do the same with Sindh. They do the same with anybody protesting against their power. The only ones who does not get targeted by the army are terrorists. Those are fine.
Now that's fascinating. Is the reason for that because there's a threat perception that even the army is like, why should we fight? Listen, I don't agree with the words because I truly believe these guys are not terrorists. They're freedom fighters fighting for Baloch freedom. But I was just looking at the South Asian portal. For those who don't know, this portal is called South Asian Terrorism Portal.
Yes,
All right.
I know. I know it very, very well.
Yeah, and I was just looking at 2025. Okay, Jan, Feb, March, and holy moly, there's not a day in Balochistan
Yes.
that something has not happened. Like just in March, right? 1st March there is an incident. 2nd March there are 2. March 3rd there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. March 4th there is 1. Again March 5th there are 3. Then 7th March there is 1. 10th March we have God knows how many. This is like almost every day something or the other is happening in Balochistan, and this is picked up by mainstream Pakistani news. They're just culling news reports.
See, okay, South Asia Terrorism Portal is a very rigorous think tank. The reason why they call them terrorists, it is because, according to the international thing, BLA, Balochistan Liberation Army, has been put by US into the international terrorist list, even though they perfectly know Balochistan Liberation Army has not an international agenda, never did anything out of Balochistan, and is not an international terror group. But they did it. They put it because in that moment, Doha talks were going on, and they needed to please Pakistan to be helped with the Taliban, with the Haqqanis, and so on. But so that's the reason why it's called a terrorist army. But I would like to see the hijack the train. The first thing they did has been releasing all the civilians. Oh, and don't tell me, yeah, they were men. Yes, they checked the documents. The only one being retained were the ones belonging either to the army or to the intelligence, traveling in plain clothes. So they released all the civilians. Days later, they started opening fire on their civilians, like they usually do. Before the train hijacking, their Bukti has been bombed for the umpteenth time. And they take civilians. They bomb civilians. So now you tell me, who's the terrorist organization? Because if you want to define a terrorist organization, you define it with what? My line is has always been, don't touch civilians. You are fighting for the freedom of your country. Yes, target the army. My grandmother's brothers were partisans, were fighting against the Nazis, but they were not touching their wives or children. Nazis were randomly taking civilians in revenge. And this is exactly what the Pakistani army does. They use Gestapo methods. So tell me what they have to do. Peaceful demonstration, unarmed people, children. What they have to do. And now they started taking women. Beside Marang and Sammi, lots of other girls have been taken. And we don't even know where they are, disappeared. And you say we don't know the amount of violence. Oh, we do. I can make you a very detailed list because I've been talking to survivors.
Not just that, I mean, half of the year I live in Canada, so I mean, I'm sure you must have heard of Karima Baloch and her mysterious death. Apparently her dead body was...
Karima and I were together in Geneva. So yeah, that's another interesting thing.
Yeah,
Canada.
Apparently she just fell in the Toronto waterfront. Apparently.
Oh yes, at a point there's been an epidemic of Baloch killing themselves in the water. Yes, jumping in the water. An epidemic of depression after getting whatever they were looking for, asylum, job, whatever. They just, in the case of Sajid Hussein in Sweden, he was even waiting for his family to join him after a couple of days. Yeah, but he jumped in the water.
Yeah.
And funnily enough, he jumped into a river and his body has been found a month later in the same point. Because notoriously rivers are still.
It's just insane. Like, as I was reading, your book and really, I mean, I have to appreciate it, how the most horrifying part of the book is especially chapter 9, Kill and Dump. Oh my God, that is just like, it's heartbreaking. All of what you have, you've just nailed it. What, from a geopolitical perspective, why doesn't the West look at Balochistan?
Again, the legal answer is Balochistan is an integral part of Pakistan, is a region of Pakistan,
but no chiding on human rights, democracy.
Yeah, but the human rights are reported. Nobody really cares. I mean, amongst the other 1,000 human rights violations all over the world, then of course there are human rights which count more than other human rights. Some country counts more than others. It depends on the interest the rest of the world has in that moment for that part. Pakistan has been having for all the years of the so-called war on terror a key importance. They always thought, everybody always thought they absolutely needed Pakistan to fight against Taliban. It wasn't true. Never mind. Musharraf itself wrote into his book how he was taking for a ride Americans. Does not matter. Pakistan has been given for years, and even before for other reasons, for years. Well, it started with the Russia invasion of Afghanistan. So Pakistan has been given mountains of money, free hand, and if some impunity in what was happening. See, years ago, during the war on terror, at a point they used American helicopters to bomb Balochistan, saying they were trying to bomb Taliban. Of course, Taliban has not been touched, but the excuse was this. And there were reports by NATO of what was happening and how the border was crossed, the border with Afghanistan was crossed easily by Taliban and so on. I said it in a conference in Italy, and the then Pakistani ambassador who was sitting there started insulting me like she was the last of the Dobby Walis, but not contesting facts, because facts are there. And yes, we allowed them to, human rights. At the end of the day, you can shout and scream for human rights. On paper, you have been highlighting the plight of Baluch, of Pashtun, of everybody else. But you get along with it. Things might change if the voices going around are true, and if really they gave permission to China to use Gwadar as a military base. That might change the game, because nobody will like to see a Chinese military base a few kilometers from Chabahar and in front of Oman.
Now, my problem with why I wanted to talk about this hypocrisy is that I think the Indian audiences, and I'm sure you'll also understand it, is like Karima, if you go around talking to the Baloch diaspora, to people who are activists, who are actively involved in the work outside Balochistan, not one person says Karima was not killed by the ISI.
Yeah.
Obviously, they don't have evidence, but they're like, we know she was.
Yes, we know she was.
So what disappoints me is that, and this is where the Western hypocrisy comes, the Canadian Prime Minister of that time, Mr. Justin Trudeau.
Justin there.
Yes. He doesn't say a word. All right.
No.
While on the other hand, Hardeep Singh Nijjar, an actual terrorist.
Yes.
Right? They have no evidence of India doing what they claim India to do.
Of course.
They go around the world talking about Indian foreign interference and how India is involved allegedly in the murder of Hardeep Singh Nijjar, while it is a clear case of internecine gang warfare, which is very normal in Khalistani circles for people, for Punjabis like me. We know what they do, and they're just involved in gang warfare all the time. And for people who are from the subcontinent and who have a functioning brain, or for that example, even if you look at Bangladesh, right, the murderer of Mujibur lives in Toronto.
Yeah.
And the murderer of Sheikh Mujibur has police protection. This is a lopsided...
Because he's persecuted.
Yeah, I mean, I don't understand what makes sense in any of this. I just don't... I fail to understand.
I'll tell you how it makes sense. Okay, Justin has been kept in power by the fundamental help of the Sikh party, which is
NDP,
which is closely tied to the Khalistan movement. Now, one of the questions I always had fun with was asking these Khalistani guys why, if the capital of the great Khalistan state, the Khalistan kingdom, ruled by Maharaja Ranjit Singh, why they are not claiming Lahore and all Punjab? Yes, is a legitimate question.
Yeah, that's
Lahore was the capital. Interestingly enough, you say this, you don't get an answer, you get insults. For a simple reason. These fellows are financed and helped by Pakistan. So they will never bite the hand feeding them, for the simple reason, in Canada, a case like the one involving Karima has been passed after not even a proper investigation. After less than 2 days, they decided it was a suicide. The reports are all against this. Never mind. It was a suicide. And get done with this, because it was in Pakistan interest.
the irony of this entire situation is that this idea of human rights that is being selectively applied in the entire discourse, why it harms the Baloch discourse, in my understanding, in a disproportionate way, is that the Baloch diaspora is very small.
Yeah.
There are not a lot of Balochis outside Balochistan living in the Western world. From the ones that do, the ones who know the language of discourse, to go in conferences, to speak in conferences, are very minuscule and very tiny. So even if one of them is allegedly bumped off, it creates such a setback to the entire Baloch discourse. And in that scenario, a person like me thinks that it makes, people like you who have, championed their cause so much, even more important, which takes me to the next question. Why aren't there enough of you out there?
See, the ones out of there were neutralized in a very effective way. Let's take Mehran Marri's case. Mehran was for years the official speakers at UN for Baloch. What happened was, at a point, Mehran was stopped at Zurich airport while he was traveling with his wife and the 2 little kids. He has been stopped and all the family detained. Mind, they had something against Mehran, not against his wife and the kids. So starting from this is illegal. So Mehran has been presented with something, because it was written in German and Mehran does not know German, without a lawyer, a paper in which what he could gather was it was accused of being the chief of a terrorist organization. Now, the paper was addressed to Mehran Baloch, born in Karachi, Pakistani citizen. So Mehran is Mehran Marri. He was born in Afghanistan and he is a UK citizen. But never mind, to get out of there, so they made him sign whatever, and Mehran has been banned from Switzerland for 10 years. So no more Baloch representative at UN. Boom. By the way, a quick note. Children and wife has been detained with Mehran, with no water, no food, and illegally, because what do you have against them? So could have been and should have been a main case for fighting, yeah, this is human right, and that's not Pakistan, it's Switzerland, could not find a lawyer who would pick up this case. Anyway, this is a side story. Let's go to Brahum Dag Bugti. He has been denied refugee status, political asylum. The same asylum was granted to his wife and his mom, not to him. But since they know exactly that the moment he goes back to Pakistan, he'll be killed, they keep him there. But without an official status, he is practically a prisoner. He cannot go anywhere. He has not a passport. He cannot do any political activity, otherwise risks to be deported. Boom. Other way to neutralize him. So less well-known people like Sajid Hussain or Karima. Karima was quite well-known, but in that moment, the focus had been shifted from her. But less known people are dealt in another way, either killed or beaten up abroad. Or UK intelligence has been advising a couple of people of the threat to their lives, telling them to avoid places where Pakistani gather. So it's like this. They know they can do it, so they do it.
Yeah, it's insane. It's just sad that we've come down to this state of affairs where the Baloch people have to go through this process. Just as a sideshow, how's the Khalistan thing in Italy?
Oh, that's interesting. Okay. They had the chief of a local community killed. Some bomb has been put out of the house of another representative of the community. There have been fights between factions, all because these people did not want Khalistani flags out of Gurudwara. So in the past, there have been a nice, interesting string of people coming from India saying, which all the coming regularly in a boat, I mean, a regular one, not an immigrant random boat, with all the papers made by a lawyer in which they were asking for political asylum because they were persecuted in India for being Khalistani, which is very interesting. I've been asked that I know because somebody asked me, Madam, do you know what this thing is? Because we never heard of it. So I said, yeah, is the latest scam because nobody, there's no Khalistani movement in India. So, yep, except 2-3 fellows. So if those 2-3 fellows are asking for asylum, yes, otherwise, no.
The problem with people who are part of the Khalistan movement is it's entirely based on lies.
Yeah.
It creates a bad image for the innocent, hardworking Sikh community. The immigration scams are so out of hand, and why Italians need to worry about this is that they should learn from what happened in Canada, and they should be nipping it in the bud right now, because Canada has kind of shut shop now because of the backlash. I think they're trying Australia. Australia learned, they shut shop. They tried New Zealand. I don't know what the state of affairs in Italy is. I hope Maloney tries to nip this in the bud right now. And drugs is a major part of the funding that is generated. And what the after effects of all of this is, it creates such a backlash for real sufferers.
See, the Sikh community in Italy have always been hardworking, very respected, and very well integrated in the past few years. And as I've been highlighting quite a lot of times, these incidents happen everywhere. There's a very strong Pakistani community. It does not happen in other places, only where there's a strong Pakistani community. These kinds of incidents are started happening.
Yeah, you had written about this in January, right? The dark nexus of Khalistan and Jihad in Italy.
Yes.
I remember I had read it and shared it. And what makes me sad is that, again, the sufferers are the hardworking members of the Sikh community. But and the irony is that while the world should be talking about real refugees like the Baloch and many others, we're actually being, immigration has been hijacked completely. I'll give you a couple
by
of
Punjabi. Pakistani is the second nationality of immigrants we have in Italy. And almost all Punjabi. I came across maybe 1-2 cases of Baloch because I've been asked by their lawyers to explain what it is, because of course not so many people know. But they are mainly Punjabis, mainly middle-class Punjabis, with the most extravagant stories ever. There are waves into the stories which are practically all the same for the same time frame. Yes, but are quite, 99% are young Punjabi middle-class boys.
Yep, watch out for sudden claims of being oppressed in India, because so I'm not making. I actually looked at such immigration applications for refugee claims. 2 of them really were the funniest. One guy said, "It's from Delhi." Okay, imagine being oppressed in Delhi. All right, we're recording this in Delhi right now. This person said he was oppressed in Delhi. He said, I was a voter of the Congress and the Aam Aadmi Party was oppressing me. And somebody said, I was a voter of the Aam Aadmi Party and the BJP was oppressing me. And these are the kinds of ridiculous stories that come up. Then the latest fad in fake immigration applications is the sudden rise of homosexuals in the Indian community.
No. No comparison to the sudden rising homosexuality in Pakistan. The latest is they are all gay. They're all gay, running away for their lives.
Yeah, we are queer and we are here.
Yes, exactly. Another very interesting one was time ago, a string of so-called Pakistanis coming from POK, and the main complaint was beside a phantomatic jihadi angle, but the fire, the cross-border fire between Pakistan and India, which has been stopped long ago, was killing cows. Was actually killing cows. So they were deprived of a living. No, there are very interesting stories. So, some other fellow at a point was asking for humanitarian protection, mind, a boy. Humanitarian protection because the poor little thing was running away from an arranged marriage. And you look at the people and you say, are you serious? A boy. I mean, he could not take a shout or a slap from his dad because this is the maximum that would happen. But yeah, humanitarian protection. So now they're all gay because all the other stories around,
They're all gay.
yes.
Oh man, it's so crazy. But Francesca, before we wrap up, maybe we can spend the last 10 minutes or so on practical solutions and short-term solutions and maybe mid-term to long-term solutions for the Baloch problem, in your opinion, because you've really followed this movement like a hawk. So let's start with the short term right now with what's happening, whether it's with Maharang or what. What can we as average citizens do for the Baloch people?
What we can do is not shifting the focus from Marang, from Sami, from all the people disappeared, because the moment they are not anymore in the limelight, the moment they are not anymore in the international press, they risk to be killed. One day they will say, yeah, they died in jail because of some sudden illness, or they risk to be killed. Is not an hypothetic. They really risk to be killed. If they took them, even with all the international interest Marang and Sami have, if they took them, even with that, this means also they enjoy total impunity. So we should also pressure, we are journalists, we should start writing and pushing for our articles to be published. I mean, I don't trust anymore international organizations. I don't trust NGOs because they just do lip service. They don't really, and they are not really interested in Balochistan, because also, you know, the Baloch cause does not fit any frame. There are not the usual boxes to tick. No white oppressor, no white colonizer, no Jews. The Baloch cause has the same, they are not speaking about Baloch or demonstrating for Baloch. For the same reason, the feminist organizations in Europe or in America are not demonstrating for Iran's and Afghan women. Is the same mindset, is the same mind frame. So what we can do is talking of it and not being silenced about the number of disappeared, not being silenced. Oh, what they killed, you were talking of kill and dump before. You know what they did after the train hijacking? Since they tried to pass the narrative, of course, fake narrative, that the army liberated civilians and they killed a huge number of terrorists. What they did was taking some of the disappeared, shooting them, and then throwing them on the site, and not to make people realize what had happened. They were retaining the bodies. So this is what they do. Otherwise, sometimes some of the disappeared reappears thrown in some street, in some field, with signs, horrible sign of torture. And there are mass graves. Each time a mass grave is discovered, they manage to cover it immediately, not to let people find who they are. There's been found bodies on the top of an hospital, dead bodies. I mean, it's the only thing we can do is being loud and vocal about it, because maybe one day somebody will wake up and will start to exert a real pressure on Pakistan. But I would love to see Pakistanis doing it. I would love to see Pakistani fighting for their state, because a state ruled by the army in my book is called a dictatorship.
Do you see Balochistan being a part of Pakistan in the long term?
At this moment, frankly, no, because things are gone too far. Things have gone too far. I don't think now anybody except the few paid by Pakistani army, I don't think anybody in this moment is willing to accept any kind of discussion about being loyal citizen of a country which behaves like a colonial army.
So it's just inevitable. It's a matter
According to me,
it
is,
when,
unless something big happens, unless they withdraw all the army from Balochistan, unless they will pack and send to jail the death squads and all the ordinary criminals they are paying to run private jails and torture people. Unless they do this, and I don't see them doing in the next future, no, I don't think.
Yeah, it's just disgusting. And I just, before we maybe end our discussion, I just hope nothing happens to Marang Baloch. That's the only thing I'm like.
I hope nothing happened to Marang, nothing happened to Sammy, nothing happened to the other girls, even though I'm sure something is happening to them. Maybe not so big to Marang and Sammy, because again, they are well known, but the other girls are disappeared. So I'm pretty sure of what's happening to them. And yes, I will not stop talking about it. I will not. I just hope. I mean, these are people which have been suffering for years. Marang's father has disappeared. Each one of them has somebody in the family who's disappeared. Do you know what disappeared means? Means that you are sitting home with a void, and every day you don't know. I mean, your life gets stuck, crystallized.
No
at that moment. There's no closure. You don't know. You live of hope and despair.
Yeah, it's just terrible.
And in most cases, this thing has been going on for 15, 16 years.
Yeah.
I mean,
Marang was 12, right? When her...
Yeah. Marang was 12.
Yeah, it's just terrible. Well, Francesca, thanks a lot for speaking with me and for writing this wonderful book. I really had a great time reading this book. The irony is that while you wrote this book almost 5 years ago, it's still as relevant as today. And if anything, things have become worse off. So what's the next book that is coming up?
The next book is on the Balakot attack and Aishi Mohammed.
Nice. I look forward to that. And when that comes out, I'll make sure that we'll have a chat again. All right, guys, we'll wrap up. So again, the book's name is Balochistan Bruised, Battered and Bloodied. The link to buy the book will be there in the description of the podcast. We have a Kindle edition and a paperback edition, whichever you want to buy. Both the links will be there. So I would really urge you, if you can support the Baloch movement in any way possible, anyway, if you want to follow Akhtar Mengal, if you want to follow Marang Baloch, if you want to follow Baloch activists outside Pakistan, Wherever you want to follow them, you should study them. There are a lot of good things that can be done. We should talk more and more about it. And if you want me to keep talking about these issues, do support the Cārvāka podcast. You know, this podcast does not do ad reads, and it survives purely on membership, so that I can talk about such issues where I'm not beholden to some company telling me, oh, you cannot talk about these grave issues. I hope you guys support me for this and many other such projects in the future. Keep watching the Cārvāka podcast. Until then, namaste, take care, bye-bye, have a good time.